my podcast. I am so delighted and extremely excited to have my guest, Francisco Jara, a great friend of mine. Welcome to the show, Francisco. How are you today?
I am doing excellent. Thank you, Noria. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here as well. Yeah, I mean, we've known each other for some time and just been watching your evolution and seeing your podcast and getting the little ping. I was like, yes, yes, I'm excited to be on this and just kind of dance with you here. And yeah, so thank you for having me.
Yes. I have to tell people a little bit of our history. So when I was living in California, we're both in the same industry. So we're both in real estate. You do lending, and I'm in the title and escrow side. And so we met up with each other. I came to your office and we were just having these conversations about business, but at like a totally different level. You know, I knew you were very spiritual, and you're a spiritual leader, as well as have your own like little world, you know, and then this entrepreneurship path. But everything that you were about was so refreshing. Like you were so authentic. You were very connected. All you cared about in our conversations was like how to give back, how to help people, and how to help others rise, and the way that you view like corporate America, and you know, and how we can really transform it into something that is just has deeper purpose was like amazing to me. And ever since then I was like, yes, I'm going to be friends with Francisco. Like he's so awesome.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I mean, it's been a lifelong journey, this entrepreneurial path, and you know, I feel very privileged because I grew up in it. You know, not everyone has an opportunity to sit at a table where your father and uncles are entrepreneurs, and so just being in the dialogue immediately, it was like my genetic was just like absorbing it all, and you know, I tell this story about when my uncle handed me my first business book at 13 and I nerd out on it. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. You know, and it's like, it's how to win customers and keep them for life or some weird, you know, title like that. And you got a 13-year-old, and like, imagine my son, you know, giving him this book and he's like, wow, Dad, this is amazing. And it was the equivalent of getting that instrument. And I, you know, just immediately, you didn't have to tell me, it just was organic for me. And it's been a path for me. And I think growing up in that, I was a very creative kid. I was like, man, we could use business for these beautiful things. And then, you know, I'm 44. And so, you know, the internet first started coming online. I started seeing visuals of what was going on the planet. I'm like, what's going on, humanity? You know, we're going in the wrong direction. And so I immediately, you know, got into the entrepreneurial world and said, hey, I'd love to do it a little bit differently. And it's been a beautiful, you know, up and down journey, as you know, entrepreneurship really is. And now being an entrepreneur for 20 years now, you know, I've gone through the ups and the downs and losing it and doing all these things, you know, all those scars, I think, that are necessary for true leadership is to get forged in darkness and in the low times and to check your resolve, you know, and now 20 years in this, you know, I think my resolve has grown tremendously. And, you know, you know, still that young entrepreneur at heart that believes that we can use business as a way to heal the world. And I believe we're in a time of great transition.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Thank you. And, you know, I mean, it's so true. You know, I think that's the other thing that you know, my work is, I think, you know, from a sort of grandiose story, you know, new tapestry of humanity. People love this energy, but simultaneously, I think my role is to ground that, you know, because it's not this, doesn't have to be that. I think the work is to really anchor this reality, and it's through sharing and I think that's what my role is now, is to demonstrate that, look, there is a different type of way to move in the world of business. There's a different organizational blueprint. As you know, that's what Giving Business Soul is about having, you know, entrepreneurs like yourself essentially adopt this open source blueprint that you can integrate into any business and have it, perform at a higher octave, one
I want to talk. I do want
yeah.
to talk a little more about that because it is so cool that you really are attracting this community of entrepreneurs who are spiritually connected and probably are running their businesses more from that in a smart way, of course, but also that intuitive, um, just by connecting right to like a higher power. And so tell me a little bit of like where was this born and when did you have this idea? And I definitely want to touch on your incredible event that I was able to attend around the same
Mm.
time last year. Was it last year? It was, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
2/22/2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, it was
It
all
was like
two.
such an amazing event to attend right before, we had to
Yeah, yeah,
deal with
yeah.
all the
Totally. I thought it
uncertainty.
was quite, yeah, quite intriguing to have that thing happen, and boom, a sequence of events, and all of a sudden we're inside the COVID world. So yeah, I'll share with you where it was born from, and it was actually, and for entrepreneurs, listening, I think it's really important to understand that all your ups and downs are necessary, and our work is to be intrigued as to and explore these areas. And in me, in 2009, I had gone through the sequential sort of great awakeners, if you will, right? It was like I had a mortal disease, stage 3 cancer, and then it was loss of a marriage, of relationship of 10 years, and then the $1 million bankruptcy, business bankruptcy. So it was like I was in a really dark place, and I was just in that place of asking and questioning, and doing one of these exercises that I was led to or guided to. It was about finding my soul's purpose, and I did this exercise, and what came through was giving business soul. And when I wrote those words, I mean, it was like an immediate cellular memory response. Like I started weeping and crying. And that for me are those sort of breadcrumbs that God has left in my passage. It's like these are moments of pay attention here,
Hmm.
and because it moves the soul. And I did, and I didn't know what it was. So I tucked it close and I just kept walking, and this whispered in my ear the whole entire time. And and obviously, that moved us through the 2012, and I ended up getting a master's degree in spiritual psychology. And in my Capricorn nature, I just really just started just diving into a lot of different threads of wisdom, of which I had already learned a lot. But what became apparent was that in 2012 we were crossing thresholds cosmologically, and these thresholds really represented a time when we would come into a place of union, right? They talk about, and the Mayans were the best at this, right? They talked about East and West, coming together, that science and spirituality would start finding a common language, which is, physics and spirituality are at the same table describing the same things, and that the masculine and feminine would finally come into union. And so we were moving into a time of synthesis. And so from that standpoint, I was looking at business and saying, look, there's two types of business, or two types of organizations in the world. You have business that is a very masculine energy, sort of organizational structure, and it's very logical and linear and just always about getting stuff done, and that's the energy of that. That's business.
Productivity, high productivity.
High productivity, like let's go. It's that high driver energy, and that's the energy. It penetrates. It wants to achieve its goal, and God, it's such a useful energy. But when it's wounded, when it's not anchored in love, and it's just growth for growth's sake, then this is where you start to develop greed. Ambition that is not rooted in love will fester greed eventually, and that's
Oh
what we have
my
seen.
gosh, that is so good. I'm gonna have you repeat that. I'm like, I need to write this down.
Yeah, ambition that is not rooted in love eventually turns into greed. And that's what we've seen in the world, and it's very clear. That's why, like, when I say that, it just rings, it just like resonates, because we've seen it over and over from successful entrepreneurial archetype that we see, just going at it 100%, but it's just for the sake of hitting goals. It's very masculine. And so when we
And
have,
unfulfilling.
yeah, exactly, it's not, and it's empty, and that's why they keep going. It's very cancerous. That from a biological standpoint represents cancer. It's unsustainable growth that eventually collapses on itself. And when you have an entire society, an entire business sort of, industry, you end up developing a wasteland. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing more and more of this sort of climate change that is occurring, but it's through our inability to be in harmony with nature. And then you have organizations that are nonprofit, as you know, and these you can say are philanthropic in nature. They have a feminine energy to them. They're always about nurturing and taking care of, and making sure everyone's well nurtured, and they're beautiful organizations. But as left alone, they're missing a component. They can't quite achieve the level of beauty that they're really designed for, because there's an energy missing, right? And so if these are the two types of organizations that have existed, then just like everything else, we must move into a time of synthesis, right? We must bring these two seemingly opposing organizations into harmony, into union within one structure.
The
And
yin and the
that's
yang, right? Like
the yin and the yang.
yeah.
I mean, it just makes logical sense, but one thing again, this quote that you liked, or this thing that I said about not rooting in love. So when you have the yin and the yang, you have to understand, it's like, well, what goes first, right? And we have been designed in a society to believe that the masculine goes first, and that and it's just not true. If you look into nature, nothing comes into physical existence without coming through the womb. The womb is the portal into existence. The woman is the tree of life. She brings the spirit of the soul, and makes it into the material world, right? And so
So
that
divine, like the way you explain it, it's truly
yeah, and
divine.
it's just, I'm able to articulate truth, and that being the case, then the feminine must be first from an organizational standpoint, right? And when you have, and what that really means is like, what is your soul's calling? What's your heart's calling as an entrepreneur? You got to look back at your life and see where you've been challenged, where your traumas have occurred, and what you have overcome. Those are the antidotal, breadcrumbs that your journey has left you, that when you heal that, you want to alleviate the suffering of others that are moving through that. And so maybe your organization becomes that. It becomes that's the essence, that's the ethos that, like in the Mortgage Phoenix standpoint, is to build homes for women and children, right? And now, so that's the heart, that's the feminine. And then we use this masculine energy of just getting stuff done, and so when we put that sequence together, we have a world that can go back into harmony, right? Because right now we've had it the other way. We've had the masculine, which is mental, and then you have the feminine, that's the heart. And when the masculine leads, it's like, let's just hit those P&L numbers, let's just hit these growth charts, let's just take this dominant market position, and the heart is going, hey, don't ruin these forests, don't do these things, but it just doesn't listen. And so what is necessary is for the reversal of that. And that's a big part of what Giving Business Soul is here to demonstrate. And the Mortgage Phoenix Group is its first a organization that essentially has integrated this platform. And beyond just like that aspect of it, I think where people can really get a hold of what I'm saying, because it's, again, it may sound grandiose, but it makes evolutionary sense, because, essentially when you look out into nature, she is the most prolific system we have visibility of, right? She is efficient. I mean, she sustains the human race. I mean, this thing.
That's a very powerful job to have.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, 8 billion of us, and you know, and so when you study nature, it reveals great truths. It reveals great principles. And so the blueprint of what Giving Business Soul holds, which is called the Violet Organization, is the adoption of these principles, right? And one of them, I think you have it already in your organization, Nuria, is that it's a culture of wholeness, right? That the organization welcomes the entire human, not just the productive, metric oriented individual. It's the one that's highly emotional sometimes. It's the one that is moving through a death in the family sometimes, and to be able to be, again, sort of this vibrational sanctuary for them, where they can feel seen, they can feel heard. And when you are able to hold people through this is where the soul and the spirit begins to bloom, as you've seen. I believe that these new organizations will be like ashrams. Like, people will come and they will come out better human beings. And as leaders, that's really, I mean, it's like, thank you for your time, thank you for your devotion, thank you for the level of engagement that you gave the organization. Your energy, your nourishment, your life force has propelled it, and thank you. And thank you. And it could be this beautiful clothes. It doesn't have to be these things, but that's a culture.
And a relationship, I feel like it's a two-way relationship, and you lead the same way, right? It's not I'm the boss, you guys do this. No, it's a collaboration, an exchange of energy,
Yes.
and yeah, just treating people like with love and respect. And there are brothers and sisters, like, we're doing this as like collectively to get to those goals.
Right.
And but first, like how you're saying, I totally get it. It's like that love has to be there first before
Mm-hmm.
everything flourishes. And like I just did a Date with Destiny for the second time around with Tony Robbins, and that was like a huge understanding for me, and kind of this crazy download of really getting that it really is all about love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it really is all
I
about it.
know.
And so when you hear
It's
it
so
like throughout
cliche,
your
right?
life, yeah, you're like, oh, it's all about love. Okay, whatever. But it really clicked.
Yeah.
I got it. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. It's kind of overwhelming to just receive that fully and really understand that. So
Yeah.
I love that that's what you're talking about. It's like that is the base of everything. That's how you've created what you've created. You're building homes, for women and children. And I definitely want to touch on that when you're ready. But all about the love, and I
Yeah.
love
Well,
the
I love the
love.
love. And when you have a culture, like, again, when you started from that feminine essence, and people really get the authenticity that this leader, like he's embodying this. Like he walks in our role as a leader, is like, you literally is just congruency, alignment to your own vision, and embodiment of your own value system of the organization. And when you do that, you start people want to be a part of something. It's such a sentient soul. It's like, we're here for greater aspiration, and there isn't a lot of purity in the world. And when someone can feel that, they immediately want to contribute and be a part of that. And when they start to come together in that role, then as you mentioned, it's like, our role is more of that gardener. That's that. As a leader, we have to evolve past this, I'm gonna rule by the iron fist, and we have to continue to evolve. It guts us out. I know how hard it is, because I read all those business books, and it was like, you hire fast, fire quickly. I mean, all these cliches that we learn, and it's just learning to understand that it's not all about me, and that people are divinely intelligent. And if I give them a container and empower them, and give them the right waters and soil and light, again, in that gardener archetype, they will bloom. I need to get my arrogant ass out of the way, you know, and let them do. And because that's nature, right? Nature knows there's a divine inherent intelligence in all things. It's not calling out the rules from a command center at the top of a
A
hierarchy.
hierarchy. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's just the intelligence is everywhere, and it just allows that to come through. And we as individuals, as cells of the great mother, you know, that's inherent in us. And when people start to you know, see an organization that speaks to this and gives this conversation life, you know, they just start to bloom wide open. And that contributes so much to to the overall health of the organization. And what I'm demonstrating through the Mortgage Phoenix is that these organizations, even though we tithe on every transaction, even though there is a 33% profit distribution to the organizational staff, because that's a part of nature, right? Nature always has this way to self-sustain itself. And I think the
Life will
profit.
support more of what supports life.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you take those, the profit, and you're using that as nourishment to the roots, which are the people, you know, it just continues to bloom. And then as leaders, you know, they take care of it as their own. And that's a beautiful thing. And what I'm demonstrating is that these organizations, this violet organization, it's not only deeply fulfilling, and but it's actually just as profitable, if not more, you know. And I think that once we can demonstrate that, you know, that it makes sense from all of these, you know, sort of spiritual and practical standpoints, and more people say, okay, there's something here, you know, this makes logical sense from an evolutionary standpoint, from a mathematical standpoint. You know, it's like the revenues have to move just the way that energy moves through nature, right? There's mathematical phi ratios and all these, you know, signatures that God leaves inside of nature, and that's the same sort of energy flow that the organization has. And if we're supposed to be in harmony with nature, it would make sense that organizations do that through the way the money flows through it.
I love that you talk so much about nature and science as well, and you know, even with like the math and the numbers, and I think I'm definitely realizing that it's all connected in a very beautiful way. And
Yes.
this whole entrepreneurship journey is really this big spiritual game. And um, and the way that you talk about just nature and just allowing, there's a lot of that surrender and allowing all the pieces to be able to move. And I think that's so important to talk about for anyone who's listening who is in business, which a lot of my listeners are, and you know, is if you could just understand that once you're able to get to a level of leading by like really allowing your team to bring in the ideas, really allowing them to show up and empower them to really like playful out in their role, and that they have freedoms in that. Like it really takes things to a completely different level. Instead of like, yes, you lead, right? So you're the visionary, you paint the picture, you're where people will follow, but you're like, these people have such extraordinary gifts, and they've come up with, my team's come up with the most like incredible ideas, and working collectively to move this forward is like a game changer. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're tapping into like collective intelligence. I mean, it's going to outdo individual intelligence.
Yes, yes. It's
Very
not just
easy.
one, it's like
Yeah,
all these people together.
it's totally
That
like a beehive mentality.
amazing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so amazing.
I mean, yeah, I think if I could put it to language, it would be this: like, how do you get to that, right? And that's a big part of what Giving
Mm.
Business School is doing, and we're having, you know, these online master classes and different things like that. But one, again, you're the vision holder, right? You know, what do you see for this organization, and then your work is to hold the vision, embody it, walk it, integrate it, cultivate it. It's got to be you eat, you sleep, you drink. All of it is like, like a razor sharp sword. And that's the starting ground, right? And so now what you have to understand from your individual standpoint, your organizational standpoint, and you said it just right, is like entrepreneurship is a path to awaken. And so that means that we move from the lower frequencies to the higher frequencies. And when you look at it from that perspective, there are three basic spectrums of human consciousness, and they are considered survival, service, and surrender. The survival frequency is where the majority of the world is caught in, right? This aspect of,
Exactly.
yeah, this aspect of, it's just survival, it's all about making sure I have enough and me, because I'm taking in so much stimulus around me, and sort of buying into this matrix reality, and you're just caught. And that's why, during this last vacation, I had my boys watch The Matrix. It's like, because it just gives a good frame. Like, a lot of people are stuck inside of that. They don't know it, they don't feel it, they can't taste it, but they're locked in an idea that I got to get sufficient to survive, right? But and this is the first sort of like, the soul comes in, if you can imagine, this illuminated soul comes into this understanding in this world, and it initially is in that frequency. Then by divine intervention, you have an accident, or you meet a teacher, or some divine providence happens in your life that the soul begins to remember. It starts to awaken in you, right? And that begins to occur because it might involve some sort of healing for yourself, or something that occurs, and as a result you want to alleviate that suffering from others. Because when the soul is truly birthed, because as it says in the Bible, it's like, first it's born of the flesh, but then when it remembers, it's born of the spirit. And when it's born of the spirit, it starts to remember, oh my God, like I'm divine of origin. Like, I'm this human, I'm this soul that incarnated in this body. And as that memory comes more and more into ourselves, it's like we move into this very service oriented reality. We become a lot more energy efficient when we move, through society. It's like we're giving, we're nurturing, we're uplifting. It's a general. Do we fall? Yeah, absolutely. But we have the tools to see reality, in this higher way. And through a continual effort of continual healing work and shadow work, you move into these states of surrender, right? And in this state of the surrender, it's considered to be thy will. This is the state of thy will. When the human mind matures enough to know that this divine intelligence that moves migration of birds and the currents in the oceans and the seasons, this intelligence is moving me as well. And there's 14-15 billion years of evolution occurring through me. And it's very arrogant of the human mind to believe that it knows better than that intelligence. And our role is simply to allow it to move through, to listen, to pay attention to the way God communicates in the world of the subtle. God and the divine is in constant communication with us. And the more that we move into the heart, we begin to sense it. And in that space of surrender, essentially we as individuals and leaders have to move ourselves into these states. And as we do, the organization that we lead evolves, right? Because we get better at trusting, right? We get better at trusting, what's occurring in our life. And then that trust will translate into the trust that we have for our people.
Not trying to control everything, which a lot of people in business have that tendency of that, right? Like, oh no, but it has to be this way. This has to be perfect. And once you're able to let go, and I do want to talk a little bit about that, just that surrender part, because I feel like a lot of people confuse the meaning behind that word. Like, surrendering does not mean giving up, does not mean like going for it and whatever you want to create in this life. That is not it. What surrender means is letting go of many things, like it has to look this specific certain way, letting go and just trusting, right? Trusting in that higher power that life like is still happening for you. Tell me more about how you would describe that surrender
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, it's such a delicate balance, especially for the masculine as well, because it connotes giving up, as you said. And I can assure you that to know great power, you must know its counterpart, and that counterpart is surrender. Because it's because in order to be in that energy of God, to be moved into that, that's it, intoxication. But you can only move into that stream through the surrender. And it's not my will, it's thy will. And again, it's just trusting that if you've done all that you've done, right, you've done it with an open heart, and something is not playing out based on your expectation, that we can let it go, right? And when we let it go, what happens is that eventually something opens up on the other side, right? How often have we done something where it's just like, oh no, I can't believe that person left, and and then a week later, just boom, the right individual comes in, and it's like, oh my gosh, how much better of an upgrade is that, right? And that's that divine intelligence. You couldn't have scripted that, right? But it just requires a letting go, as you said, because like, in my sort of younger entrepreneurial days, like if something like that happened, I'm immediately moving to try to hire somebody or do something. And now it's like, I can be patient. It's like something something
That's a good
something is
word.
something is afoot. But it
Mhm.
requires, again, such a deep trust in life,
Yeah.
but that's what I think we cultivate over time in our soul's journey through life. We just continue to deepen in the intimacy with this journey and go, my God, it always and she starts, I call it she, but she's got she's the sense of humor. It's a funny sense of humor, and but it's this just this very divine relationship that gets cultivated. But I think our role, back to the question here, is that our role really is to do our disciplines, right? To do those things that we have dominion over, like our devotion to the temple, to where God resides. And if we do that, well and consistently, and we become a disciple to our commitment, to why we're here. And then our role then is to, I feel, as leaders, is to continue to work on ourselves. So if anything is happening that creates disturbance, that it becomes a signal. It's like, there's some material here. And then we
Yeah.
continue to integrate these shadows, these unresolved aspects that cause disturbances in our field. Because as leaders, especially as we move into these big transitional times, being an anchor, to be able to hold so much, is really that of what a leader is. And in order to be able to hold, that, and hold a great vision, we have to clean out, we have to purify, these aspects of ourselves that are not in resonance with that which we're trying to hold, and
I wanna just break that down, because so here's the deal, Francisco, you're very spiritually advanced. And so I kind of want to break it down a little bit for some of our friends who this might be brand new to, that they're like, what are these two talking about? Right. So
yeah.
coming back
Thank
to like that, how you said, like embodying that temple, or, like, and if what you're talking about is doing a lot of healing, like self work, becoming a
Yes.
better self, healing your old wounds so that therefore you can radiate in a different place and come like lead from a different place. And just like living by your purpose of what you're to do here, like sharing your gifts with the world, living by
Mhm.
purpose. I just want to break it down so that perhaps if someone got a little disconnected
Yeah.
there. Like this is what we're saying.
Yeah, thank you for grounding and thank you for doing that for me, because I do
You're good. I mean,
I
for me,
can get
like
lofty.
I can talk about this.
I know you can for sure. So that's why I'm like, yeah,
Um,
we're just having this conversation.
yeah,
But
but
yeah,
I just think like this is such a great conversation. It's so needed.
thank you.
And then perhaps somebody's listening and they're just like, they're curious about
Yeah.
it, right? And so I just want to make sure we're inviting everyone to just seek to understand that there's this whole other way of doing business, that there's this whole other untapped world that
Yeah.
you and I both hope we move more towards in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, so that we really can all rise together.
Yeah, yeah, beautifully said. And to make it in sort of these practical terms, I mean, what we're looking for in it from that terminology would be like just like emotional dexterity. You know, as leaders, we just want to have like an high emotional intelligence. You
Yes.
know, and when I went to the University of Santa Monica, and really started to understand emotions at a more of a granular level. And as I started to recognize my own emotions and being aware of stimuli and response, things that were happening, and like, oh, wait a minute. And just that beginning step, began this process of understanding, what's necessary to heal, right? And one of these great sayings from the University of Santa Monica is that your outer experience is a reflection of your inner reality. So your outer experience is a reflection of your inner reality, right? And so your emotional, overall theme going on is gonna dictate your external world, right? And so as a leader, then what we want to do is we want to resolve these emotions of shame and guilt and fear and
Yuck on
separation.
shame. Shame is
Yeah,
the
it's
worst.
it's it's one of those great
Low
sacred.
vibrational emotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're in play for all of us. We all have these, and our role is to do this work, and it's called the great work. It's been known through antiquity. It sort of was lost, but it's just this idea of continuing again to look at what's happening in our external world, see how our emotions are responding, and getting to understand where that's coming from, so that we can address it, so that
And they
we
can
can
be
heal it.
like they're your guidance. It's so
Like a
beautiful
beacon
to
signal.
understand.
Yeah, it's literally like a beacon signal, and it's so simple, and anyone can do it. You don't have to belong to any church or anything. It's like it is just fundamental humanity, an understanding of our vehicle, both physical and light, and understanding how we optimize this thing so that we can start to utilize the higher faculties of what we are as humans, and not the lower ones that have been displayed. And so as we get to the origins of where these traumas begin, and we bring light and love and understanding and compassion, then that's what happens, is that we continue this evolutionary process. And we become more loving, we become more whole, we become more integrated. And that's the journey that is really, I think, accelerated on the entrepreneurial path, because as you know, shit's always going off. There's always an opportunity very early on, like there's stuff going on, this person didn't show up, and rejection from here. And when that upset comes, it's like, cool, there's some work here for me. Why, what am I not seeing? What am I not trusting right now? What,
I
it is.
feel like that. I feel like that work is probably some of the most important work that humans can do, is just that healing, of and understanding, just being emotionally intelligent, of understanding when you have a trigger, where is this coming from? Why? If there's some wounds there, heal them. Like there's just, it's I feel like it's a lifelong path of doing that work, and to some extent, sometimes it's super deep and sometimes it's lighter. But I feel that it's so important. And if every human being had the ability to have access to understanding oneself and the emotions and where things come from to heal, you're exactly right. Next time something like that shows up, you become aware, you then choose to react differently and to change behavior.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautifully. And to give individuals on your podcast some like an aspiration. And this is taken from Christian mysticism. Essentially, all the mystical traditions speak of this grand treasure that is available to all humans.
Um,
And this is the descent of the Holy Spirit into the vessel, right? And saints have achieved this marriage, as they call it, a sacred marriage, an alchemical marriage. And this is when the saints always show this halo, right? And so what that signifies is that the Holy Spirit has descended into the human form,
yeah.
right? And if you can imagine that the Holy Spirit is feminine, it's grace, after all,
Oh, beautiful.
yes. And so like the way that I experience it is that in order for the queen to come, the kingdom must be set, right? It's got to be, again, this vibrational sanctuary that the queen wants to come into. you know she's not going to come into a mental structure that wants to dominate and kill, and it's going to say, hey, I don't know about that. It's not a divine sort of energetic template where I can reside. It's not,
I
and
love
so
that word, by the way, vibrational sanctuary. That's
yeah, thank you.
great.
Thank you. It came through like about a week ago. I was like, oh, I like that.
Yeah,
But yeah, but it's also like in this context, it's like you that's what you want. You're working on getting your vessel to your energy body, and this is why this healing and this shadow work and all of this is necessary, because as you do more and more of that, then you begin to take care of your body differently. You start to honor the body. You start to honor, again, all your emotions. And as your energy becomes subtle enough that, it invites the descent, it invites the descent of the Holy Spirit in.
that's where the
And
mind, body, and soul connect. Like,
that's exactly it.
yeah.
And all the mystical tradition, it always, I can show you every pyramid on the planet had this understanding. Every pyramid, and it was a universal understanding. It wasn't held by one religion. It's like, this is, when we bring the past and the future into unity. It's when we marry the masculine and feminine energies within us. It's like, this is when we begin to know the divine, in form. But it's got to be the synthesis, and it was known as the great work. And this is, I believe, an understanding that is coming back. And I believe that when that marriage happens, it fully anchors, it bursts your sacred purpose. You see, it gives birth, because if the masculine, the feminine is descending into the matter, right, into the physical, into the masculine, and then it's going to birth something. And we have a very specific code in our DNA. It's sort of the divine justice, if you will, for being human. It's like, if you're going to go down here's a code that is possible to unlock, to give more light into this world. And as that merger happens, you birth your sacred purpose.
Oh, I love that way that
Yeah,
you
it's like a
explain that.
divine.
Beautiful.
It's like a divine third. You're in this, it's a birthing process, as you know.
Yeah.
Innovation.
Have you watched the Disney movie that just came out, Soul?
Not yet.
You'll like it.
Yeah.
I'm actually very proud of Disney for putting this out. It's really great.
That's good. It's nice
Yeah,
that it's kept.
kind of read along all the things that we're discussing right now. But I know we're like, time with you just kind of disappeared during this podcast. But I do want to touch on, before we finish today, is that I want to give people the opportunity to learn more about the building these homes that you build. You're doing it all the time. I'm like, it's still on my dream board to do, to come and do
Yeah.
these service projects with you. But can you tell everybody a little bit about this? And I'd love to, if someone is interested in helping build these homes, how they can connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because, I think that the evolution of spirituality is philanthropy, right? Our evolutionary journey should lead us to philanthropy. And what philanthropy is etymology represents the love of humanity, the love of humanity. And so the philanthropy that we do, my sense is that the greatest necessity that the earth has is bringing union between the masculine and the feminine. And so what we do is we're building homes for women and children in Ensenada, Mexico. It's just here on the other side of the Southern California border, so it's relatively logistically easy to get to. And the journey started back in Nicaragua, interestingly enough, in 13, and then 14 went to Guatemala, and then Colombia, and then Peru a couple times, and those were great, but far logistically
Yeah.
difficult. And then we found here next door, and we have now built 13 homes over the last 2 years in that project. And what's really
So
exciting,
amazing.
yeah, thank you. What's really exciting too is that this year we're really going to be rolling out the philanthropy as we saw it from the beginning, and that is that, like, how do we inject energy into a system to break its cycle, right? And because charity is beautiful, but giving them a house is a very charitable act. It's beautiful and it gives them a foundation, but it's not quite breaking the cycle, if you know what I mean. And so what philanthropy is designed is to break these cycles. And so what we're doing this year, because of where business is maturing to now, we have now brought in an escrow company into this blueprint, legacy real estate powered by EXP, as you know, powered by the same blueprint. So we're all on the third floor here in Rancho Cucamonga, about 14,000 square feet, and we're all tithing, and as a result of that, now we're touching 14, 15, 20,000 a month that we're able to do. And what we're going to be doing this year is we're taking the men who we built homes for and starting to teach them different traits, right? Teaching them essentially how to build homes. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, because as we continue to have extra funds, we want to bring economy into it. So when we're doing that, let's say we're building every 6 months, and then the hope is every 2 weeks we can build a different home eventually, and that being the case, now we can use them as the labor force and teach them the traits of learning how to build
That's a
and use
great ecosystem.
exactly what we're praying for. And then eventually, that those men can go into the workforce and now start getting paid 2 or 3 times what they get paid right now picking vegetables. And so that's a really exciting, and to be able to do this in a time, that is, again, in such disarray. It's just a beautiful, thing of what we're capable of in even very chaotic times.
When's your next one coming up?
So there's an all women's build on January 30th, and you can check out prosperityhomes.org is the site, prosperityhomes.org, and you can jump on now and just book right through there. And the next one after that's February 28th. So we'll have probably a good 6 to 8 schedule for the year, and yeah, and I think we go in between as well. So we've been doing a lot of in between trips, and we want to start bringing some education to the women as well. And we have women in the ecosystem that want to start teaching women's health and different things like that would be of contribution to the ecosystem. And so a lot of really beautiful
The best
things.
way that someone could get more familiar with how they can help if they wanted to be a part of this is going to prosperityhomes.org. Is that right?
Yeah.
is there an option to contribute monetarily if someone can't make a trip? Is that available?
Yeah, it is. So you can go right on the site. You can make donations. You can see when we're doing builds, and if you want to donate to that build, and then what's coming, I think it's up as of probably this week. If you're in the real estate industry and you want to support Prosperity Homes, we have these gift boxes now, and they're $99, and it provides them, a story of what we're doing down there, a couple of mugs of coffee, a coffee bag from Fair Trade that we're doing with Ensenada, and some really cool little features. And they can deliver that and also contribute that way. So we're looking to continue to expand through the real estate industry and have people use that as a way. Yeah, it'll be cool. So big, exciting year coming.
I know, Francisco, you're so wonderful. Thanks for sharing all of your amazing wisdom. We're both wanting the same thing, to just move this entrepreneurship journey forward into just different levels, and just allowing for so many people to be able to be like service through it, whether it's through growth or just making an impact in people's lives in whatever way we can do that. Definitely being of service. It's an honor to know you. I want to end with, if somebody is interested in just following you on social media, or perhaps reaching out to you, if some of the words you spoke today really touch them, or, maybe have questions, how could they reach out to you, or email, whatever you'd like to share?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate your acknowledgement. It's been a privilege to know you this time as well, and definitely see you as this wonderful ally, and one of these bright lights that I get to look at, and just really point. And I love what you're doing with Novation. Continue it, and just know you have a friend here. And for everyone listening, it's just very simple, either Facebook or Instagram. I think you'll see some bigger things coming from myself and Giving Business Soul this year. I think it's a big year of expansion, but it's just Francisco Jara, and on Facebook, and then Instagram, I think it's francisco.jara.33. And you could find me there, and also givingbusinesssoul.com. You can sign up for the newsletter, and I'll have a podcast later this year as well, where I'll start to interview, Nuria type of merchant doing great work and spreading the light. So yeah, that's how you can get
love it. Spread the light. Spread the light. Well, thank you so much for being on. Everyone listening, I know you enjoyed it just as much as I did, and I hope that you keep spreading love, keep spreading light, and that you have such a beautiful day. Thanks, everybody.